All right, let's get right into it. If you're gearing up for the INI-CET, you already know it feels like a massive uphill battle. Well, in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise. I'm going to lay out a clear, simple strategy to help you study smarter, not just harder.
First things first, let's just acknowledge the situation. You're facing a mountain of information, right? A million different resources, endless advice. It's completely normal to feel totally overwhelmed by it all.
So you're preparing for the INI-CET. We all know it's a marathon. It takes serious dedication and, more than anything, intense focus. But, in the world we live in, that focus is constantly getting hijacked.
You're deep in a study session. You click on one link, and bam! Suddenly you're staring at Japanese car seat covers. I mean, what does this have to do with medicine? Absolutely nothing. And that, right there, is the point. Prepping for this exam can feel exactly like that slide. Random, confusing, and totally irrelevant. That's the digital noise, all the stuff that pulls you off track and just wastes your precious time. So, this brings us to the big question. In this endless sea of information, most of it useless, how in the world do you find the signal? How do you zero in on what actually matters for the exam?
Well, the answer is to stop seeing the exam as this huge, impossible mountain and start seeing it as a code. And you know what? Any code can be cracked.
Look, this isn't about pulling more all-nighters or trying to memorize every single word in every textbook. That's just brute force. The real key, the smarter way to do this, is to be strategic.
So where does this strategy come from? It's not some big secret. It's actually hidden in plain sight, right there in the data from the exams themselves. The code is in the patterns of what gets asked, over and over again.
And here's our key to unlock it. This is an analysis from PrepLadder that breaks down 5 whole years of INI-CET exam trends. By looking at what's come before, we can get a really good idea of what's likely to show up again.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at this table. See how topics like cranial nerves and neuroanatomy show up in almost every single exam? This is what we're talking about when we say high yield. These are the topics that give you the biggest bang for your study buck.
So, with this data, we can finally stop studying aimlessly and start being targeted. We can literally create a map that guides us straight to the most important stuff.
Think of it this way. Instead of trying to wander through an entire, massive curriculum on foot, you now have a treasure map. It shows you exactly where the most valuable points are buried. This is going to save you a ton of time and energy and seriously boost your chances of success. So let's make this real. For a huge subject like anatomy, your map would tell you to prioritize things like cranial nerves, the brachial plexus, and core neuroanatomy. And remember, these aren't just random guesses. This is what the data shows gets tested again and again.
And hey, this logic works for everything. For medicine, the data points straight to critical cardiology topics like AFib and MI on an ECG, key CNS issues, and of course, super relevant infectious diseases. It's like the exam itself is writing your study guide for you.
Okay, so now we know what to study. The next big question is how. We're going to use anatomy, a subject that trips a lot of people up, as a perfect example for building a smart learning toolkit.
As the textbook One Touch Anatomy says, the whole point of anatomy is to dissect, to cut things apart to understand all those complex structures. It is a subject that's all about the nitty-gritty details.
And yeah, this pretty much sums up the challenge, doesn't it? Just look at this diagram of the cranial cavity. All the foramina, the grooves, the crests. It's just this dense, intimidating map of information you're supposed to memorize. Trying to learn this by just staring at it is a recipe for disaster.
But this is where having the right tool changes everything. Instead of trying to memorize that scary diagram, what if you just used a simple mnemonic? King, Queens, Rose, IV. This little phrase helps you remember the key foramini in order, turning a really complex spatial problem into something you can actually recall.
Here's another genius tool from the same book, a conceptual rule. Where muscle goes, there movement flows. Instead of memorizing the action of every single muscle, you learn a core principle. If a muscle crosses a joint in the front, it's going to produce a forward movement. It makes anatomy feel intuitive, not just a list of facts.
And that's the whole point. Your study toolkit needs to be packed with smart learning aids like these. Things like mnemonics, flowcharts, tables, and of course, working through previous year's questions. This is how you master complex topics without getting totally lost in the weeds.
Okay, let's wrap this all up. We started out swimming in information overload, and we found a clear, data-driven way out. This is your final strategic blueprint for tackling the INI-CET.
It's really just a simple 4-step process. 1. Identify the noise and just commit to filtering it out. 2. Find the code by using past exam data to spot those high-yield topics. 3. Create your map and focus your energy where it's actually going to count. And 4. Build your personal toolkit with smart techniques so you can learn those topics effectively.
This is the path from just studying hard to truly studying smart. It turns exam prep from a chaotic mess into a structured, confident journey. You now have the blueprint, so the only question left is, are you ready to start building?